Was Yahweh, the God of the Bible, actually the creator of the entire universe? Or was he something else entirely, a jealous, localized deity who was just one member of a much larger, much older, dysfunctional family? The answer to that question might be buried deep beneath the sands of ancient Sumer. For billions of people around the world today, the name Yahweh is sacred. It represents the singular, omnipotent Creator, the Alpha and the Omega, the God who stands alone. But there is a different version of history, a version that has been whispered about in academic corners and shouted about in conspiracy circles for decades. It suggests that if you look at the ancient texts found in the dirt of Mesopotamia, the God we think we know starts to look familiar, suspiciously familiar. We are going to open a door that many people want to keep shut. We are going to look at the terrifying possibility that the biblical God, Yahweh, is actually a composite character, a literary merger of two distinct, warring alien entities from the Anunnaki pantheon. Once you see the fingerprints of these two brothers on the biblical narrative, you might never be able to unsee them. Let's go back to the beginning. Not the beginning of the Bible, but the beginning of history itself. Most of us are taught a very specific timeline. We are told that Yahweh revealed himself to the ancient Israelites as a unique force, completely separating them from the pagan idol worshippers next door. This is the foundation of monotheism. One God. No competition. But then the 19th century happened. Archaeologists in what is now modern-day Iraq started digging into mounds of dirt that had been ignored for millennia. They weren't looking for just pottery or gold. They found libraries. They unearthed the ruins of Sumer, the world's first true civilization. And buried in the wreckage of cities like Ur and Nineveh, they found thousands of clay tablets. When scholars finally deciphered the cuneiform script, they didn't just find grocery lists or tax receipts. They found myths. They found laws. They found epic stories of creation and destruction that predated the Hebrew Bible by thousands of years. And here is where it gets uncomfortable. These tablets spoke of a group of gods called the Anunnaki. The name translates roughly to those who from heaven to earth came. According to these texts, the Anunnaki weren't vague spirits. They were physical, tangible beings who engineered humanity to be a worker race. For a long time, historians treated this as metaphor, just ancient people trying to explain the rain and the sun. But in 1976, a man named Zecharia Sitchin threw a grenade into the conversation. He published The 12th Planet, arguing that we shouldn't read these texts as myths. We should read them as history. He claimed the Anunnaki were flesh and blood extraterrestrials. Now, pause. We have to be intellectually honest here. Sitchin's translation is almost universally rejected by mainstream science. Historians call it pseudo-archaeology. They say he mistranslated words to fit a sci-fi narrative. But even if you strip away the spaceships and the aliens, the core problem remains. The stories on those clay tablets are nearly identical to the stories in Genesis. So, did the biblical authors simply copy-paste from the Sumerians? To answer that, we have to meet the family. At the top of the Sumerian hierarchy was Anu, the Sky Father. But he was distant. He wasn't involved in the day-to-day management of Earth. That job fell to his two sons. And this is where the drama begins. First, you have Enlil. His name means Lord Wind, or Lord Command. If you want to visualize him, think of the ultimate authoritarian general. Enlil was obsessed with hierarchy, order, and obedience. He viewed humans as a necessary evil, a labor force that needed to be kept in line. He was the storm, he was the discipline. Then you have his half-brother, Enki. Enki was the Lord of the earth and the God of water. He was the opposite of his brother in every way. Enki was the scientist, the geneticist, the magician. While Enlil was sitting on his throne barking orders, Enki was in the laboratory getting his hands dirty. He was the one who allegedly designed humans. He was the sympathetic trickster who constantly broke the rules to help his creation. This sibling rivalry, the conflict between the cold commander and the sympathetic scientist, is the engine that drove Mesopotamian mythology. And it is this exact dynamic that seems to bleed right into the pages of the Bible. Let's shift our gaze to the desert. Before Israel was a kingdom, before the temple was built, who was Yahweh? For a long time, we didn't know. But then we found the Shasu inscriptions in a temple in Sudan, dating back to the 14th century BCE. It mentions a group of nomads called the Shasu of Yehu. This tells us that Yahweh didn't start in Jerusalem. He started as a warrior storm god in the southern deserts. As this deity moved north and evolved into the God of Israel, he became multifaceted, complex, almost contradictory. In the Bible, Yahweh is a creator who molds Adam from dust, but he is also a warrior who leads armies. He is a father who loves his children, but he is also a judge who incinerates cities with sulfur. Scholars have noticed something strange in the Hebrew text. The name for God switches. Sometimes it is Yahweh, sometimes it is Elohim. Elohim is grammatically plural. It literally means gods. When Genesis says, "Let us make man in our image," who is the us? Traditional theology says it's the royal we, or the Trinity. But a more historical reading suggests something else. It is a linguistic scar, a leftover memory of a time when there wasn't just one God, but a council that looks a lot like the Anunnaki. Let's unpack the specific parallels, because they are too precise to be accidents. Look at the creation of man. In Genesis, Yahweh forms Adam from the dust of the ground and breathes life into him. Compare that to the Sumerian Atrahasis epic. The gods have a labor strike. They need workers. So Enki, the scientist, takes clay, mixes it with the blood of a slain god, and genetically engineers the first human. In both stories, we are made of earth, molded by a divine hand. But the personality of the creator matches Enki, not Enlil. Enki is the wisdom bringer. In the Garden of Eden, we have the serpent. The serpent offers knowledge. Your eyes will be opened, he says. In the standard Christian narrative, the serpent is Satan, the deceiver. But in the Gnostic view and the Sumerian view, the serpent represents Enki. He is the one trying to upgrade humanity with wisdom, while the Lord wants to keep them ignorant and obedient. Now, flip the coin. Look at the other side of Yahweh. The side that demands absolute submission, the side that brings the flood. The story of Noah's Ark is perhaps the most famous story in the world. God sees that the world is wicked. He regrets making man. He decides to hit the reset button with a massive flood. Only Noah is saved. But this story was not original to the Bible. It was written down on the Epic of Gilgamesh and the Atrahasis tablets more than 1,000 years before Genesis was penned. And in the Sumerian version, we get the motive. Why did the gods destroy humanity? Was it because of sin? No. The text says it was because humans were too noisy. We were overpopulating. We were loud. And Enlil, the grumpy authoritarian general, couldn't sleep. He got annoyed. So Enlil convinces the council to wipe out the human race with a flood. It is a callous, cold administrative decision. But Enki, the scientist's brother, betrays Enlil. He goes to a human named Utnapishtim, the Sumerian Noah. He speaks to him through a reed wall. He gives him the blueprints for a boat. He tells him to seal it with pitch and take the seed of all living things. It is the exact same story. The bird being sent out, the landing on the mountain, the sacrifice afterwards. So here is the one God from many theory. It suggests that as the ancient Israelites developed their religion, they didn't just invent a new God. They engaged in a process called syncretism. They merged the stories. They took the attributes of Enki, the wise creator who forms man from clay and saves him from the flood, and they mashed them together with the attributes of Enlil, the storm god, the lawgiver, the one who demands order and sends the catastrophe. This explains the schizophrenia of the Old Testament God. When Yahweh is walking in the garden, gentle and creative, that is the echo of Enki. When Yahweh is thundering from Mount Sinai, threatening death for touching the mountain, that is the echo of Enlil. Two warring brothers, fused into a single deity. This theory is radical. It upsets the theological apple cart. It suggests that the one true God is actually a literary composite of a dysfunctional extraterrestrial family. We aren't saying this is the definitive truth. We are saying the texts exist. The parallels are etched in clay. The history of religion is a history of evolution, of borrowing, and of retelling. Whether you view this as divine revelation or ancient mythology, one thing is clear. The story of who we are and who our gods are is much older and much more complicated than we've been led to believe. So, I have to ask you, does this change how you view the Bible? Do you see Yahweh as the creator or as a composite of ancient myths? Let me know your theory in the comments below.